Abel James, and you might know me from Fat Burning Men, but you might not know that I actually got started in a lot of this as undergrad at Dartmouth, studying brain science and psychology. And my first book was about how music and art can change the way that our brain functions. So I tried to spend as much time in flow as I possibly can, and I think this panel is going to be a lot of fun. So once again, we will open it up for questions at the end, but why don't we get started just by whoever wants to answer first. What is flow precisely, and why should we care about it?
Flow's an experience. I mean, we call it flow. Some people call it being in the zone, bruh, I guess. But being in the zone is when you're totally immersed in the moment and you're not thinking about what you had for breakfast or what you've got to do next or all this talk. It just shuts up, you're in the moment and you're doing whatever you're doing. So for some people, it could be drawing. When they're drawing, they're just involved. Can be art, can be writing. Happens a lot through sports. Can happen at work even. And it can basically happen anytime. Meditation's a great way of getting into flow too. It's just being totally present, engaged, in the moment, and that's you.
I'd like to say it's probably the optimal state of consciousness.
Yeah.
It's also, I think, one of the most enjoyable states that we can ever reach. I mean, this is true pleasure. I mean, if you look, from the Buddhist perspective, they say life is suffering, but it isn't in flow. It never is, because in the present moment there is no suffering. There could be pain, but there is no suffering. And flow is the ultimate anchoring to the present moment, where all of this living in the past and living in the future and all of this stress, it just melts away, because all there is that instant. And that's one of the greatest pleasures that we have available to us as humans.
One thing I was going to add is, as a communal animal and not a true lone wolf, connecting, I think, which is one of the biggest problems people have these days, is the number of conversations that you'll have where the person's looking at their cell phone, and I'm guilty of it. Really just stopping, connecting, being fully immersed and in the zone with somebody else. It doesn't just have to be a solo experience.
And there's an aspect to it that's almost like automatic thinking, right? When you ask a lot of people who are high performers, maybe elite athletes or musicians who are improvising at a high level, how they're doing it, they have no idea, because they're not thinking about it, they're performing. And it's this blissful state almost. When you get there, you feel 100% focused, almost like, the proverbial squirrel that's running across the power line, that's able to make it every single time, right? Because you don't have to, if you stop to think about it, you're gonna fall. And so as soon as you kind of realize that you're in flow, you ruin it. So what can you do once you achieved it to maintain that brain state?
Yeah, that's one thing I want to just follow up with, because, in quantum physics, there's something called the observer effect. As soon as you go looking for something, that thing changes, and changes based upon the observation of it. And it's very much like that with flow. So you'll hear people like Sam Harris talk against some being in the zone by saying that he did a study where somebody on the basketball court makes 2 buckets in a row, they're no more likely to make the third. Therefore, nobody gets in the zone. Being on fire is not a real thing. Well, that's total bullshit. I was a basketball player. I've been around basketball my whole life. I can make 2 buckets and totally not be in flow. That could just be sheer luck. It has absolutely nothing to do with me making 2 buckets. Yeah, that could be it. I could miss 2 shots and be in flow. It doesn't really matter. Only you know when you're in flow. And if you stopped at that point to tell a scientist like, yo bro, I'm in flow right now, forget about it. It's over. Like, you can't study that stuff, So it's something that's only really the person participating can really accurately say when they're doing. You can't apply these statistics like science likes to look at, unless you're hooked up to a brainwave monitor, which again, if you're trying to hoop with a brainwave monitor on, that's going to be a little rough as well.